You're listening to Parent Projects.
Hi, guys, and welcome to this week in our sibling rivalry month. Dividing things and not the family, it's a concept that seems to get lost pretty easily when we're sorting and we're distributing a lifetime of treasures that have been collected by our family, by our parents. Today, we're going to talk with an industry expert and a developer of a proven system that divides personal property between heirs, David McMahon. If your family's downsizing a loved one and stuff will play a role in your parent project, stay tuned.
You're listening to Parent Projects, a family media and technology group production. Now here's your host, Tony Siebers.
Hey, everybody. I'm really blessed to have an opportunity to sit down with somebody who was a part of my early journey into parent projects. It's seniormoves.org when I started working with the complexities of family dealing with downsizing. One thing that's always been common into downsizing is there's usually stuff that's got to be dealt with, and it's not something we're good at, and there's a lot of reasons. Our guest today, David McMahon, is one of the first people who taught me that it's okay to not be good at it because it might be the only time in my life I ever have to do it. So we're going to, I'm blessed to bring in, hey, David, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Tony. Nice to see you.
Great to see you today. We've gone back quite a few years now.
It is.
Long before I decided that I was going to focus on how we could to really fix this problem for everyone else. It was just really trying to understand this up front for even me. And you played a role, obviously, with fairsplit.com's play a role in my life multiple times personally. So tell me, how'd you come about dedicating a significant portion? I mean, from everything you've done in that corporate world, you put together a lot of different products and helped a lot of companies. How is it that you settled on this problem in your life?
Well, thanks, Tony. I had the chance to have a lot of fun companies, but I have to say that when I really looked back on them, I personally probably was somewhat responsible for filling at least one or two landfills. I created a lot of products and sold millions of them that were injection molded styrofoam packaging, and I really wanted to do something with a zero carbon footprint. And I also wanted to do something that actually had more true value to people rather than just making them laugh or some kind of a silly toy. So I got into my first .com software company I started back in 2000. And it was partly also as a way to be home with my kids more rather than traveling to Asia and everywhere. I started that one, so I learned about the ability to offer something online that was available to everybody anywhere. And that really appealed to me, that I could make something available to everyone. But when I started that first company that I started, it lasted 20 years. And then about 12 years ago, I saw that it wasn't going to be the one that I finished with in my career. So I decided that what do I want? What else would I want to do? And so I thought, what's the best invention? I'd always been called an inventor, and I thought something that solves a problem for people. Help solve a pain point in their lives. And so that had me reflect on what are the two things, or what things have been most painful for me. And I lost my dad really early in life. And my sister had to go to his house, find things that his mom, his sisters, his three children would be able to hold on to remember him by. He was only 46 years old. And so everyone wanted a small piece of something. But back in those days, I think there was telex machines or fax machines, not the ability to actually share online and easily ask people, hey, would you like this? Or would you like somebody else to have it? So I thought, gosh, there must be an easier way now with the internet. And then a few years, just 2 or 3 years before I started this, I gone through a divorce after 15 years of being married. And it was amicable, but one of the hardest things was us walking through the house or discussing on the phone who got to keep what, and have it not be emotionally painful. I mean, we were both trying to create separate homes that would be familiar and for our kids. And so we both really needed everything that was there. So it was for divorce and for the settling the estate, helping people figure out what anyone else wanted. So that,
And there were
yeah,
a couple of commonalities between those circumstances. It sounds like they really
there
resonated.
were. It could be awkward emotionally, like, well, gosh, if you want it, then you should have it. Even if I really wanted it, would be one. What
Yeah.
we see with sibling rivalry sometimes is, I talk about how you have a kind of a passive sibling, and then you might have a more aggressive sibling. And the more aggressive, well, sure, they're going to ask for what they want. And then the more passive might be trying to pacify and make everybody else happy. So they're not choosing what they want because they think their older sister might have wanted it, or she looked at it like she might want it. And then they don't take it. And then the brother takes it because he knows his wife will like it. And the next thing you know, you've gone down this rabbit hole of people not actually choosing what they want, and it having emotional things involved.
Yeah.
Not only that, the practical side. I mean, now very few people live anywhere near where mom and dad live, or at least not all the siblings. So
All this, right?
yeah, so then you end up having to figure out, well, how can we fly this sibling in or that one, or when can we all meet together? And what I realized was with online, you don't have to do that. You can just all log in. And so that's where the idea came from. And that was, gosh, over 12 years ago now.
Well, and despite that, just even the thought sometimes of walking I know we're going to get in the next segment. We'll get into some of those top things to think through. And the overarching feeling seems to be grief's impact on individual people as they walk through this is something you have to kind of account for. But the walking through a house, I don't know, that's a checkbox in life everybody thinks about doing. Walking through mom and dad's house saying, yes, I want that, or I know I don't want that, or like that's just, it's not really.
No, and it gets more complicated because you have to go into the closets, open the boxes, look under the bed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's time consuming. It's emotional. Like if you're the one doing it, and there are all these memories tied to things, it can take twice as long as a professional coming in and doing it without that attachment.
Well, what I'd like to do is take a quick break here. We're going to show a video that talks through where you went with that passion and what you understood from that, the fair split system, what it does, and how people and heirs or the legal system can really turn to and utilize this in order to help families work their way through this particular task.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm David, founder of FairSplit.com. Most families who find us just need an impartial system to create a division of personal property after losing a loved one. The good news is that we have that system. FairSplit is an online private family account securely hosted by Amazon Web Services. It's simple, and it works. In the past, property division was cumbersome, requiring all the parties to come together in person. It was costly, time-consuming, and stressful. Having the FairSplit system all online makes it transparent, efficient, fair, and accessible to all parties. This process requires no travel, emailed attachments, or big scheduling issues. I want you to know first and foremost that we want to help you. After all, there's no reason you should be good at this. It's likely the only time you've ever had to try to do it. My team and I are here to assist you, whether you need experienced guidance with a more complex heir situation, or simple assistance uploading photos, getting items listed, categorized, and ready for division, even putting estimated values if needed. You can also literally have me help run the whole process for your family as administrator. We've helped thousands of heirs and divorcing couples over the last 10+ years. Many law firms, fiduciaries, and trust companies now use FairSplit as their default way to divide tangible personal property. So welcome. I'm very glad you found us.
And for those of you that are joining us again this week, we've got David McMahon with FairSplit.com. He's an expert in really working in this estate settlement side of the house. He's a personal friend. I get this. I understand this. David, again, thanks for joining us. If a family that's going on to begin tackling something like this under their parent project, where maybe it's an end of life stage. I don't know, maybe we could break this up in a couple of ways. Let's talk. How often do you see a family try to prepare for this before? the death of a loved one, or is this usually something that happens after?
I wish that we got more of that. I mean, it's certainly possible to use our system for estate planning to get everything listed and assign it to who you want to have it. Tony, honestly, 95% of the estates we work with, it's because there's a pain point where the executor, whichever sibling was named executor or trustee to handle this, is overwhelmed and thinks, oh no, and the instruction left in the trust or will is usually little more than and divide everything else equally among the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, little beyond that. And so, yeah, no, I wish the estate plan, we actually removed it from our homepage. It used to be a third of what we promoted. No one was using it. I wish it was not the case. And I hope that your show will help motivate people to get more, and your efforts will help people plan more. But either downsizing or estate settlement after someone passes, in both cases, it's how to get everything out of a 3 or 4 or 5 bedroom house,
Yeah.
and you can't donate it till you're sure your siblings don't want it, unless you want to create ill will. So somehow you need to have everyone collectively see what's available and say yes or no, I want it or not, and who should get it. And yeah, no, it happens after the fact, unfortunately, more
Than before the fact.
yeah.
One of the so after the fact, there's probably, I think it's grief is going to play some level of a role. Sounds like when we're talking about trying to establish value, or even desire. I mean, I guess that's even value in its own is something else to have a conversation about. But desire as to where something's going to go from that standpoint. So maybe we could tackle that down. You have on your website on fairsplit.com, you've got a resources section. And inside that resources section, one of the resources that you offer and have down there is a great article that talks through 5 tips of dividing your family estate peacefully. Could you, by any chance, just kind of break that down a little bit for us?
Sure. Yeah. No, I
what that
won't go
comes through?
through. I won't go through each point, but I'll hit the highlights. Is that basically everyone processes grief differently, and if you can stay empathetic, I now talk about a concept called wear the air hat. If you're the executor or trustee, the HEIR hat is to help you remember that everyone processes grief differently. Some people will want almost everything because mom touched it. It's sacred and it can't be given away, which may seem silly to some of the siblings. You may have a sibling that says, I don't want anything. I don't want any. I don't want to be. And sometimes they don't want to be reminded that that's just how they process grief, or their house is full. So they want either nothing or very little, and some people can take offense to that. Well, gosh, you must not have loved mom and dad. You don't want any of their stuff.
Right.
So if you can leave the judgment out of it, that's going to help so much. The other thing is, I believe that leaving face-to-face out of it is better. We developed this blind system of choosing so that you're not actually reading the other person to see what they wanted, and you don't have spouses showing up that aren't always liked by all the other siblings. Maybe some do, some don't, but it's usually just adds a complicated element that can be best left alone. And then the other thing to realize is people think, well, mom and dad paid $10,000 for that Baker sofa, and if you get that, you owe me, it's worth at least $5,000. Well, reality is, in an estate sale, it's worth, I don't know, 700 or 800 at max.
Right. That's what I was going to say. I mean,
yeah, and then yeah, go ahead.
So, well, I was just going to say some of the most painful parent projects that I'd ever done was where the family had decided they were just absolutely determined they were going to do an estate sale or a garage sale of some level, and they wanted to sit out there. And in one, I can just, oh my gosh! So, Dad had these Stein collections that he had spent a lifetime collecting, and they were gorgeous in their own right.
Yeah.
I mean, but these things went out there, and this guy came up and he's like, I'll give you $250. And they're like, wow, $250. Okay, well, that makes sense. There's like 20 or 30 of these things. And he's like, no, $2.50 each. Like, I'll give you $250 for like a couple of these ones. And Man, like the insult of it versus the shock of it. I mean, you could watch them process all of this
Oh,
emotion at once.
it's awful. And the other thing is, if you advertise that the sale is going to start at 8 a.m., that they start
Oh,
knocking on the doors at 6:30 a.m.
yeah. This is one of those guys that was here at like 7 o'clock, casing the place out ahead of time.
Right, knocking on the door. Yeah.
Da-da-da. And I mean, so he's the first one in the door. They even hadn't even had a chance to put it out there. And I tried to dissuade them from. I just have
Yeah.
never seen one go. But when it comes down again to sorting or working, I think one thing that it really drove home is that emotional value, right? If you really go out to market, the value of something is not what you think that is. And even these really higher valued things, unless you know how, unless you're going to spend the time to move it into that niche market that's going to
Right.
pay, that's and in fact that's a time in which if you're clearing out your parents' home and you find a Chihuly, okay, and if you don't know what a Chihuly is, then that would be a great first place to start by having somebody come in, right? But you're
Right.
going to want a glass expert that knows how to move that $100,000 piece, and yeah, they can be valuable, but that's in most realities you have to think about who's going to pay that's going to hire that person to come through and do that, who's going to do all that, and is that a part of that? So if
Yeah.
Fair Split can kind of accommodate for some of those things within
Well,
itself.
we help. I think one of the greatest values we do sometimes is not just the software subscription. They get, depending on the package, they get 30 minutes to an hour with me just reviewing their,
Yeah.
and I try to be available for whatever else they need. But we had a big estate that the kids were all sure that the silver collection, they had two giant silver collections that had been in the family over 100 years. They were sure they were worth $250,000, and because they had looked them up on Replacements Unlimited and saw
Right.
what they're selling for there, right? So
Sure.
finally, I got them to say, "Well, look, I'm tired of you guys fighting about this. Let's get this settled before we start dividing. And because please reach out to Replacements Unlimited and see what they will pay you for it, not what they're trying to sell it for. 10 cents on the dollar."
Oh gosh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And we
That's
ended
what
up
you'll
getting
pay.
it all, we got it all weighed, and it became meltdown value of the silver. And all of a sudden, instead of it being $250,000 worth of silver we were dividing, it was $40,000 worth between 5 kids. So all of a sudden, it wasn't worth destroying relationships over, and it became an easier family division for us to do once we got realistic on those values.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the other things that I like out of that top tips, and you kind of breeze through that up front, was when you are when there are many people that will introduce that or that feel as they're processing the grief of what's happening in this moment, right? There's some people who just want to get the heck through it. And at
There
that
are.
moment, they are not prepared to really adequately process or even accurately process their emotional value that they might hold off of things because their mindset's in that mode where, and I'm just trying to get to grief, and I know the other side of it is when we're not here. I'm not in this place. How
And,
can
and, and, the sibling rivalry made me think about their topic here is I'm working with a family right now, a beautiful, sweet family, but there are 4 of them, and one of the sisters just refuses to participate in the process. She keeps saying she's being rushed, that she does, and everybody knows that she doesn't want to deal with looking at it and thinking we're going to be done.
yeah,
And so literally she sent emails that have taken her longer to compose than it would take to do our process and be finished. And the other siblings are ready to be done. It's in a storage. Some of the stuff's in storage. They're wasting estate money. And the other sibling is just hesitant to deal with it. And so this comes up a lot. It's not unusual either.
yeah. Any tricks of the trade that you've seen across that particular problem for a family?
Sometimes for me, being an independent third party, getting to speak with that person and let them express their feelings and not feel judged by me, will let them let go of it.
Yeah.
When they're speaking to their siblings, there's that sibling rivalry that instantly they feel judged, they're not heard, all those things.
Yeah.
So I've actually found, and again, it's been surprising to me when I thought I was building a software company, that sometimes the greatest value I provide to the family is almost just a shoulder or an ear that they can feel heard, and that I've been through the process with thousands of families, so you're going to be fine. This is how it's going to go, and they just calm down.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but with the sibling right, there's a book. Julie Hall has written several books on this topic, and she says that when you lose a parent, that all the siblings become 8 years old again. And who was the favorite, who was the least favorite, who was always mom's pet child, all that stuff comes right to the surface. She said that, it becomes like you're 8 years old again. She's known as the estate lady, and she's mostly retired, but she had some good books out. And I could never forget that, because I do see that quite often.
Yeah. When another recommendation you talked about, which I found interesting, is reducing the face-to-face, which is counterintuitive for when you're processing, emotional things. A lot of times we'll want to be face-to-face so we can get a better read, we can understand where things are coming from that. But when grief is the overarching portion of that, and we might not, especially if we don't have any experience with grief, if it's your first family member that you've really lost and had to process the finality of that, we all will face inevitably, right? That there's a reprieve doing some. Not all things are best done in the room together at a particular time, and it sounds like you guys have found a lot of success with removing that aspect of it and trying to run at some level, if nothing else. Look, for instance, let me first. Ferris, let's say that you go through one of the rounds. Okay, you photograph the house, everything's gone into the system. We've got, generally, we all agreed we're going to use replacement value valuations from everything because it was important for mom to be equitable. So we're gonna go off of something like that just to kind of balance all of this out. And we're still not tied at that point in time to have to make a decision exactly as what's come off of that system. It would make sense to take the next steps and now just activate or distribute everything per that system. But that doesn't mean conversations don't continue to happen, right?
That's right. I mean, our first round we call the asset review round. It's really, you don't want to start dividing things till everyone is pretty much in agreement that this constitutes everything that needs to be divided,
Yeah.
or that there aren't things mixed in there that shouldn't be. Like I joke that one of the things when you do that first round with us, we call it the yes/no round. Does anybody want any of this? It's also to look and say, hey, wait a minute, that vacuum cleaner, I loaned that to mom and dad 2 years ago. That shouldn't be getting divided.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to choose my own vacuum cleaner again, right?
Yeah.
Other things that'll come up accidentally. You're listing 500 things to divide. Things will get duplicated. There'll be a painting that is shown in the bedroom, and it's also shown in the living room. Somebody moved it and photographed it again, or something like that. So you want to catch any things like that before you start taking turns choosing, because obviously it's not going to go well if it's duplicated or there's things that shouldn't goes in. Yeah, and it just is a good check for the person who had to do all the work putting it together, to have everybody review it all and say, hey, do you see anything that's not right here? And then every now and then somebody will go, well, I don't see any of the Christmas ornaments. Why aren't those listed? And they go, oh, no, that box in the basement, I put box 1. Well, and then, a sibling will go, well, wait a minute, we should be able to choose those ornaments. We all want some of those. So before you start dividing, maybe they have to go back and open that box and lay them out on the floor and just take some quick pictures. But you want to get all those things resolved before you actually start awarding things to people on choices. And you did mention, Tony, one thing you mentioned, replacement value. For sure, you don't want to value things as replacement value. You want to value them as estate sale, garage sale value, less 40% to cover the estate sale fees, to get down to some close resemblance to a real value if you're going to track such things.
That's great. Good. And it's a good, not just softball here to set you up for an easy one to knock out of the park, but that's I think that's highly important. So the system here and being able also to take some of the emotion, again, in a highly emotional thing, things that we can do to reduce emotion and kind of just get down to the facts. Love the idea particular of that yes/no round, not just making sure the things are correct. It's a great time to get an assessment in the front end of just assessing where everybody's at on this in general. That what is it that we're really talking about? What are the things we're talking about? Where are people at utilizing that round just to kind of figure out?
Well, one of the great things about that round is, so now, with your camera phone, you can go around, click, click, click. It's pretty fast to go ahead and record everything in the house. But realistically, let's say a family lists 500 things. After you do that round, if there's 4 kids and all 4 put no or did not put yes on 200 of the items they didn't want, well, those legitimately now can go to sell or donate.
Right.
Everyone passed on them. No one had room for them in their house, or no one wanted them. And now the administrator, the executor of the estate should feel free. They've got validation. No one wants these things. So now I can start dealing with getting rid of them. And that whittles it down. Now you're only dividing 300 things instead of 500.
Makes it a heck of a lot easier. And that's a beauty of technology. And love how you've used that and how your mind's brought that together to leverage that, this particular problem. We're going to take our last commercial break here and just kind of highlight a couple other ways in which technology are being used to leverage and help families through their downsizing situations. I'm Tony Siebers. I'm the founder of Parent Projects, and I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the organization. Come on. The organization is full of surprises. And if you've seen one parent project, you've seen one parent project. So generally, we just try to be mission-driven, objective, virtuous, empathetic, and dependable. We call it being moved. Come on and let me show you the inside. So our organization lives inside the Arizona State University SkySong Innovation Center in Scottsdale, Arizona. It gives us an opportunity to be around a lot of creative people. And creativity, well, sometimes it turns into trouble, but most of the time it's going to turn into quality content for you. I just want to take this moment to tell you we're pleased to have you here. We look forward to helping you. If there's anything at all that you need, please reach out. Follow us on the other socials that you like best and the platform that's your favorite. And until you and I get an opportunity to talk one-on-one, behold and be held. Gifting, selling, donating, sometimes trashing. I mean, these eventually, the end state with our things that we've collected throughout life are going to find one of these dispositions. Today, we're talking with David McMahon of FairSplit.com, who helps families work through whether they're downsizing, they're settling on the estate, maybe it's late in life where you're dealing with a divorce issue, how to do some of those things and keeping into mind those emotional constructs, all the issues that kind of come into play to take some of that down and just get to the stuff and be able to help a family move forward making those processes. Again, Dave, thanks so much for joining us today. So in what we were going over in general, we were talking through the importance of understanding timing in a system or where you are, understanding where everybody's at, particularly if grief's going to play a role maybe in that process. You used a term of wearing the air hat, HEIR, when you're tackling a situation like this and thinking, I love it. I love it. That's great. So in coming in with that, understanding that you have something that has to get done, might be easier to do not in person, and utilizing whether it's fairsplit.com or a process that's similar to working your way through this. The idea is you have to make space. You have to kind of acknowledge that everybody's going to be in a different area of grief, and that's going to play a role as you work your way through your project. I loved we talked about the importance of equity, the value of things. Is it worth it when you put on that air hat? Is that thing, is that $500, $700 love seat, is that worth another 20-year difficulty or break or fracture between a couple of siblings in here? And this is probably going to be a time while you're not good at it, this is a time for you to think through it and surround yourself with experts that can help you be better at it, at finding that.
I was thinking when you mentioned the sofa, it brought to mind another thing. And when I saw your little video that you shared of your company, and I saw clarity as one of the things that your first thing. And it reminded me of had a family office attorney, family office help managing high net worth families, and it came to my booth at the show. He kept coming back, and he goes, "I want you to remember two words that I love about what you're doing here that I've always had trouble making happen." He goes, "If you want to minimize conflict in a family in this process, clarity and transparency." And he goes, clarity meaning, how are we going to do it? What are the rules? Does everybody understand them? But transparency is usually one of the hardest parts, because unless everyone can be at the house and somehow you can see everything at once, there's no way to provide the transparency that's usually wanted. And
Yeah.
as you know, FairSplit, you can use it completely for free. You can upload the photos and list everything in the house. It doesn't cost anything. Just create a private family account. And that provides the transparency. But the clarity is one of the things. When you mentioned the sofa, I said, okay, so how are you going to deal? I'll be talking to the administrator, the executor. So how are you dealing with if Tony chooses this in Arizona and the estates in California, who pays for shipping and handling of that love seat to get it to Tony? Oh, well, I guess he does. Well, does he know that? Because maybe he wouldn't choose it if he thought he had to pay for it, because it's going to cost more to ship it than it's worth.
Yeah.
So those are kind of questions that need to be addressed up front. Another big one, Tony, is oh, well, we've already thought about, we watched your videos, we've already thought about, we're excited about, we're going to go first, and then we're going to do the grandkids afterwards. Because
Great one.
that
Yes.
makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Spouses and grandkids. Yeah. Like, and different families want to inject them in different places. You'll have one
exactly.
sibling, yeah, they want them right away because they would consider any decision they make to be a part of all of that. You've got others that it's an afterthought once they've seen a sibling, like a niece or a nephew, jump in and like, oh, yep, might
Well,
want to do that.
and it actually makes sense, and it makes sense that people would think, oh, that's a reasonable way to do it. After everyone's chosen everything, we'll let the nephews, nieces, and everybody come in. And I really stopped that as quickly as possible and said, here's the thing. We're going to invite all your grandkids. They can log in, they can look at everything, they can print the reports, but they should then give the choices they like to their parent, who can choose on their behalf as part of their choices. And they'll go, but why? And I'll go, well, there are four of you. Unless all of you are truly going to pinky swear that Aunt Sarah isn't going to choose that because she knows her daughter Sue would love it, then you know she didn't choose it because she wanted it. You know she chose it for her daughter Sue, and therefore you're mad at her now because she's breaking the rules. So you want to try to create as guardrails, I would say, guardrails on the system, so people are still. I always joke that one of my goals in this is that you're all still speaking at the end of the process, if you ever were. You know.
Well, maybe it gives an opportunity. In life, I've always found great benefits when things are toughest, and whether it's a meeting where the elephant in the room comes out and everybody deals with it and it's in a big dust up, people tend to remember that. It can build relationships. Those dealing with hard things can be forging, right? In the military, it can be forging to go fight and to work and go through these really hard times together. It can be something that brings everybody together, so long as everybody has that transparency and that clarity as to what their goal is, right? And that goal is, mom and dad spent a lifetime acquiring a group of things that don't all fit into our lives, right? We just got to figure out what that role is for the next, or to get that thing to the next person that can find value in it and make it. So that's fantastic. Hey, David, what are the types of questions that a family, when they're just organizing themselves about that, what are the types of things, what are the first types of things that they should be thinking about or asking each other when they're kicking off, when they know they're going to have to split up an estate like this?
I would say that they should, again, if they can somehow immediately put on the heir hat as a way to stay true to all their siblings, as a way to try to imagine what the other siblings may be thinking, then it's going to be harder to make bad decisions. And I'll give you some examples. A lot of times the oldest brother is going to be the executor, and a lot of times he cares the least about all the sentimentality of the things that other people care about. So they might go into the house and go, you know what, I just had a crew come in, we put a dumpster in the front yard, we got rid of all the stuff nobody's going to want. And I go, oh, well, how did you know they weren't going to want it?
Right.
and like they'll give, they'll get, well, we donated all dad's clothes to Goodwill because nobody's going to wear those. I go, did you donate all of his silk ties? Oh, well, yeah, why? Well, the grandkids think those are cool as anything, and to have one of grandpa's silk ties. Did you donate his hats? Because those are cool. What about his bomber jacket?
Yeah.
Those are things that, if they'll just pause and realize how easy it is in today's world to just take lots of pictures and then share those with the family through our system. Um, that's first step. Secondly, do never ever just decide, I can't deal with this now, I'm going to put it all in storage. That's like the worst because,
Agreed.
yeah, oh my goodness, what a waste of money. But also, a lot of times it'll go into boxes not properly inventoried, not photographed before it goes in. So now you're going to have to not only pay for the storage, pay to have it moved there, then pay to have it all opened up and redone. It's
Yeah, they
so
won't.
inefficient.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Yeah, they won't. It will be. I 99. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen a time where it didn't end poorly. Where that just hit after a while. They ended up selling an entire locker of whatever's in there. Is how it goes. It becomes an overwhelming problem when it all gets consolidated, packed away, and shoved into something.
It does, and I actually, it was one of the things that we've heard that another thing that made me start this company is a close friend of mine had 5 brothers. His dad was a surgeon. They had a big 10,000 square foot home. All 5 brothers could not deal with it, so they put it into 2 20-foot storage buildings. And this was 8 years later when I started my company that they said, no, we never dealt with it. It hangs over all of us all the time. Every year we talk about it and it never happens. So I thought, let me just make a system that's so efficient that no one would ever imagine doing that if they knew there was another way. And so, yeah, that would be the other thing. I'd say half the families we deal with aren't really caught up in the values at all. They're just glad someone in the family is going to get it. And even if we are asked to put values on things, Tony, if there's 4 kids, 25% each, I tell people, look, as long as everybody falls between 20 and 30, it's all estimated values anyhow. I wouldn't bother trying to get it all matched up evenly after that.
Yeah.
Again, just trying to help the family lower their temperature on what things are. Oh, and then the other one that comes up is, well, we all are aware that, my sister Sue, she's going to take everything. She's going to take everything none of us want. So she's going to get the majority of it. I go, oh, thank goodness for her. And I go, what? And I go, if she takes everything, then you don't have to deal with it. As the executor, or, if she'll take everything and put it wherever she's going to put it, that's one less thing or 100 less things you have to deal with. And so those are the things that come to mind.
I think they're great places to start. David, super challenging part of many people's parent projects. I agree. It would be awesome if people would start looking at this maybe ahead of time, maybe ask those clarifying questions. Working on assumptions is usually a very difficult and costly challenge when you're doing a parent project. So if you don't have to make an assumption of what mom and dad wanted or what somebody else wants, and instead it can be out there where everybody can comment off of, it's up, it's down, it's transparent, it's open, it's visible. I think it could really help a lot of families, and I appreciate you taking the time to come out today. I appreciate what you do every day with fairsplit.com and your other works as well. Talk to us about where people can get more information, where they can find you guys.
Definitely go to fairsplit.com, and I highly recommend spending a little time on the resources page at the top. I've done a series of YouTube videos and provided some documents. We were speaking about before we started here, that letter of instruction. If you could persuade your parents to review the letter of instruction, maybe add it to their, it doesn't even have to be added as a formal part of the will or trust. All they have to do is kind of reference that there is a letter of instruction at. And we provided the copy for that that you can edit and change, make it yours. But that will give the clarity that's usually not provided.
Right.
The other thing I would recommend, this has come up a lot recently, is you get named executor, you weren't expecting it, you didn't want it, or the trustee. And there's some feeling that, well, mom named me that, so I have to do all this. No, it doesn't say you've been named executor and therefore you have to spend all your time and learn how to do it and do all this. typically the state will pay for other people to help you that do this all the time. Get rid of the guilt that makes you think you need to do it yourself, and consider, reaching out to professionals that do this every day. It'll be more efficient. It'll take the load off of you. It'll probably have it be much more peaceful between you and your siblings, because they won't feel like you're running the whole thing and calling all the shots. So
I love that approach. I love that approach. I think left in a great place for the whole spectrum of working through the project. There's a lot of people here that can help, and I appreciate what you've done for us. And thank you again, David, for sharing your time, talents, and treasures with us.
Thanks for the chance to share, Tony. Good seeing you again.
Well, that's it for the team this week, and thanks for joining us. If you've enjoyed the content, remember to subscribe and to share this episode on the app that you're using right now. Your reviews and your comments, they really help us expand our reach as well as our perspective. So if you have time, also drop us a note. Let us know how we're doing. For tips and tools to clarify your parent project, simplify communication with your stakeholders, and verify the professionals that you choose, you can find us on YouTube, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for trusting us. Until our next episode, behold and be held.
Thank you for listening to this Parent Projects podcast production. To access our show notes, resources, or forums, join us on your favorite social media platform or go to parentprojects.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before making any decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Family Media and Technology Group Incorporated and Parent Projects LLC. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcast.